The key to sustainable leadership lies in the ability to thrive in uncertainty, ambiguity, and change. Grand Heron International brings you the Coaching Assistance Program, giving your employees on-demand coaching to manage through a challenging situation and arrive at a solution. Visit grandheroninternational.ca/podcast to learn more.
This podcast is part of the C-Suite Radio Network, turning the volume up on business.
Welcome to the Keep Leading Podcast, a podcast dedicated to promoting leadership development and sharing leadership insights. Here's your host, the Leadership Accelerator, Eddie Turner.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Keep Leading Podcast, the podcast dedicated to leadership development and insights. I'm your host, Eddie Turner, the Leadership Accelerator. I work with leaders to accelerate performance and drive impact through the power of executive and leadership coaching, facilitation, and professional speaking. As a coach, I often talk about stretching in the sense that clients need to do things outside of their comfort zone by stretching themselves. Today, with all the demands on us as leaders and the stress we are putting on our bodies, I'd like to talk about leaders stretching themselves literally and physically. I'd like to talk about that with a true expert. My guest today is Dr. Susan Bradshaw. Dr. Susan Bradshaw is one of the top chiropractors in all of Houston and author of Move More. She's a certified posture exercise professional and has appeared in print and television discussing various health topics. Dr. Bradshaw and her Lone Star Chiropractic practice was voted the best chiropractor in 2016 in the Houston Press. I am super excited to have with me today Dr. Susan Bradshaw. Welcome to the Keep Leading Podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's quite an honor to be on with you discussing our topics of stretching and how it applies to entrepreneurs and leaders.
It is truly my privilege to have you. And full disclosure, I have to tell people that you're one of my team of physicians keeping me running. And you do such a great job, especially when I come back off a flight and have been sitting in these airplane seats for hours. You give me just the right adjustment for my back and my neck, but you've been getting on me and chastising me for not stretching the way I should. And you have so many techniques that you share. And so I thought, wow, I should share some of this with my listeners. And it's important for us as leaders. So that's why I wanted to have you today.
Well, it's a pleasure. I think your situation and when I see you in the office is so common for those that travel, that have heavy work schedules. And it's a common theme in Houston and around the world. And, what I always tell people, and not to minimize any discomfort that any individual is going through, but it is so very, very common in what we see.
Indeed. And even now, I think we're probably seeing something we were not anticipating seeing, Dr. Bradshaw, in that all of us are working from home and on these Zoom meetings throughout the day. And these Zoom meetings have us stuck in the seat more than ever.
Yeah, it's so true. One thing that's happened during this virus is I've spent more time actually working on my business. And so I've been sitting a lot more, doing more Zoom meetings. And it's really kind of hammered home what people go through when they have to sit all day. And so, yeah, though it's changed from commute and travel to kind of being chair locked, we call it, sitting in one position all day, it's difficult.
Yes. Now, I'm glad to hear you say that you're experiencing it now too, so I don't feel as bad. But it's like at the end of the day, I'm like, I feel more fatigued and more achy and all kinds of stuff because of been plastered in this chair. At least before you walk through the office or you walk through a client site or something. But now we're in a different time.
Absolutely. And the research kind of backs that up too. For those people that sit all day, the research shows there's more, not just the aches and pains that we're familiar with that you think of, headaches and back pain, but then also just the mental drain that comes along with it. It's really hard on our system. Some research shows that the longer you sit or are sedentary, you're increasing your risk for cardiovascular disease, for heart disease, diabetes. So it's more than just pain. Obviously that's important. That's usually what people feel, but it kind of stacks over time. And you top in stress on top of that, which also has its own ways of creating unhealthiness in the body. It's really just confounding one on top of the other for people lately.
Yes. And so to counteract that, you always show me techniques. And I didn't have a live episode of my show when I invited you on. I only had this audio only version. But now that I have a live episode, we have to schedule this again.
That would be fun. I'd love it.
But to the best of your ability, can you share with my listeners just a couple of the things you talk about in your book, Move More, and in the sessions that you've had with me about what office workers and those of us who are stuck in our chairs all day can do to counteract the maladies that occur from sitting too long?
Absolutely. I think when people approach this topic thinking, okay, well, I need to do something. I'm hurting. My stress is through the roof. I know I'm supposed to take breaks, but then we're stuck, right? We're working. I'm guilty of it. I sit down to do some work and, it's 3 hours later, I haven't moved. So the first thing I tell people more than anything else, no matter what you do, set a timer, use your smartwatch or your phone, an app, something to remind you that you need to move regularly. Studies show if you move 2 minutes for every hour, you have a 33% less risk of dying from like any reason. So just moving regularly is important. So the first thing I would say is scheduling to take breaks becomes important. And you don't necessarily have to walk away from what you're doing. So say, you sit down, you have your cup of coffee, you do your first kind of Zoom meeting, whatever it is. After that half an hour, think about some stretches you can do for your upper body. Just simple neck rotations. Shoulder rolls are my favorite. Real nice big shoulder rolls, thinking about like as big of a circle you can make with your shoulders. And then continue on with your work. And then perhaps, half an hour later, start working on the lower body stretches. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. And you can't see it, but I'm doing it now.
I always love a good groan with a stretch. That means you're doing it well.
Yes, as you describe it, I am doing it. Good. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and that reminds me of the article in the Harvard Business Review that says that sitting is the new smoking. And that was a provocative title, but it's really true.
It is. And I had the same thought when I saw that title. I thought, okay, well, this is, what you call that clickbait, right? For somebody to click through it. And as I was writing my book and researching it, it's true. It is absolutely true. There was some statistic in there that, one cigarette takes away something like 10, 15 minutes of your lifespan. But for every hour you spend watching TV or just being sedentary, you have something like 20 minutes of your lifespan. It is not healthy for you.
Yeah, isn't that something? I told my wife, I said, I'm embarrassed to say that I've been sitting so long that it hurts.
It happens.
It's the antithesis of other times in my life where, hey, I've stood all day or I've been running and etc. But yes, so clearly, as your book, and I love the title, by the way, as your book says, we need to move more. And you gave us a nice little suggestion about a timing sequence. For those of us who may not have an Apple Watch, that Siri tells us to get up, and I forget the interval because I don't wear mine anymore, or other Fitbit or other devices, the tech watches. They help us remember to get up. So you're suggesting every 2 minutes.
No, I want people to move ideally 2 minutes every 30
Got it.
minutes. But yeah, I think, sometimes that can be a little bit difficult, but if you get a routine down, you pick a couple stretches, like I said, you pick the upper body, you do a couple stretches for the upper body, you'll do a few stretches for the lower body. And one thing that I wrote about in my book as well is the relationship to improving your posture to help combat stress. And so that's the other aspect of it too, is you always want to add in something that will say, if you're seated all day, something that kind of unfolds yourself, right? So if we're all hunched forward over a computer, we want to do things that open up our shoulders, that open up our hips to help improve our posture. It actually helps with your overall health. It also helps with your stress hormones too. So improving posture, stretching regularly is very important.
So open my chest, open my hips, and you said one more thing?
Things just to improve your posture.
Okay. Anything that you could describe over in an audio format like this?
Sure. So one of my favorites, it's actually called, originally it's called a Brugger breathing exercise. It's been around forever. So what I want all of your listeners to do is to sit up straight.
Okay.
And what that means is you're kind of going to roll your shoulder back, kind of think of, when your grandma used to poke you and tell you to sit up straight, that kind of posture. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your elbows and keep them really close to your sides. So your hands are on your laps, elbows by your sides, and your palms are facing each other. And I want you to take a nice deep breath in. And as you breathe in, you're going to open your palms, so separating them along your sides, squeezing your shoulder blades back. So your hands are opening away from you, squeezing your shoulder blades. And as you bring out, you bring your hands back to your lap again. And then keeping your elbows in, again, you're going to breathe in. Squeeze your shoulder blades back, and then breathe out again. It's one of my favorites because it incorporates breathing, which also helps relax us, but it's a good posture opening exercise.
A posture opening exercise. I like that. Very nice. Well, thank you for that suggestion, Dr. Sue. So I'm talking to Dr. Susan Bradshaw, one of the top chiropractors in all of Houston, voted the best chiropractor in 2016 in the Houston Press. She's also the author of Move More. We'll have more with Dr. Bradshaw right after this.
Hey, C-Suite Radio listener. Greg Greenberg, General Manager of C-Suite Radio here. If you're enjoying this great show, then you're obviously aware of the power and explosive growth of podcasting. That said, you may not know the amazing reach and ease of podcast advertising. Here at the C-Suite Radio Network, we have over 150 podcasts reaching millions of listeners each month, and all with affordable advertising slots ready to promote you and your business. We'll even help create and record your ad at no extra charge. From business to lifestyle to entertainment, we have shows to target your audience. We even have the technology to geo-target ads by state. So why not speak directly to your customers right where they live and on the podcast they love? Reach out to C-Suite by emailing me at greg.greenberg@csuitenetwork.com. Again, that is greg.greenberg@c-suitenetwork.com.
This podcast is sponsored by Eddie Turner, LLC. Organizations who need to accelerate the development of their leaders call Eddie Turner the Leadership Accelerator. Eddie works with leaders to accelerate performance and drive impact. Call Eddie Turner to help your leaders one-on-one as their coach, or to inspire them as a group through the power of facilitation or a keynote address. Visit EddieTurnerLLC.com to learn more.
Hey, this is Dave Sanderson. You may know me from being the last passenger off U.S. Airways Flight 1549, The Miracle on the Hudson, from the movie Sully. And you're listening to the Keep Leading podcast with Eddie Turner.
Okay, we're back, everyone. I am talking to the amazing Dr. Susan Bradshaw, one of the top chiropractors in all of Houston, Texas, voted best chiropractor in 2016 by the Houston Press. And she is the author of Move More. And we're talking about the importance of stretching as leaders. And so it's a metaphor, but it's also truly tied to our ability to be effective as leaders, Dr. Bradshaw. Tell us why.
Well, I think as leaders, and Anybody that's ever, opened a business, been responsible for employees or for a business being successful, we often kind of put our health second. It's easier to kind of work through and power through and get those more hours and do more. And we neglect the fact of overall health. And then that's what we end up seeing is the physical manifestations of that underlying stress and that mindset that leaders have.
Yeah. I pause because that's my problem, Dr. Sue. And a lot of people say that, right? I would stretch more if I had time. I'd work out more if I had time.
It's that, and I think also people think, well, it's just stretching, so it's not that important. What's it really going to do? And that's one thing I really try to emphasize in the book was that when I tell people to, okay, start thinking about how much time you're sedentary, everybody will say, okay, it's the time I'm at my desk. Now times are a little bit different, but I ask people to add in, okay, what is your commute time? Here in Houston, we have long commutes. And, we say, well, we'll take breaks and eat lunch or something. Well, then we're still in that seated sedentary posture. And people will say, well, I take breaks. And what do you do on your breaks? You look at your phone. So you're still in that folded posture. So we say stretching, but it's more, I think it's the emphasis of why it's so important because it's going to counteract all the negative things that happen once we sit down and become sedentary. And so it doesn't have to be some really long, elaborate thing. It's like I said earlier, just kind of picking an area, that tension that builds in your neck at the end of the day. Well, at 3:00, that's probably a really good time to do some neck stretches.
Okay, there you go. Got me doing my neck stretches again as you describe it.
It's like whenever I mention posture, everybody immediately sits up straight.
Yes. And the idea of how we show up as a leader. We cannot be effective if we're in pain. We cannot be effective if we don't have that straight posture that our mothers taught us about, right? To stand up straight.
Right. And so, with posture, and so stretching will help you gain that improved posture, that taller stance. There's a lot of self-confidence that comes from good posture. There's a lot of research behind that. So, there's even coaches that teach leaders on posture and how they stand. There's research between, how you stand, the improvements of your stress hormones. And then also on the other aspect, if you've ever hurt and somebody's tried to have a serious conversation with you, your ability to focus on that conversation is really limited because of just that noise in the back of your head of that aching pain.
Yes, that is true. That is very, very true. So how can we take specific steps to improve our productivity as a leader in this area?
So, as I mentioned, some tips for leaders to do to make sure that they're taking care of themselves is one, like I said, set up the time, make sure that you're actually stretching and moving. That helps improve your posture, how you're presenting yourself, your ability to focus and listen, which is very important when you're not in pain. And then other things I tell people that I see kind of across the board with people that have really kind of those C-suite high-end jobs where they're working a lot is downtime. Downtime means no technology, taking a break, taking care of yourself. It's a hard thing to do, but I find that when you're mentally able to kind of take that mini break and come back, it's really important to do. So, once a day, if you can, even if it's just 5 minutes, a stretching with some breathing, a little bit of a mini yoga exercise, something like that is really helpful. And one tip that somebody told me once is to mentally do something different. So if you work with your mind all day, in your downtime or your off time, you should do something with your hands and vice versa. So if you work with your hands a lot, you should do something mentally. I always thought that was kind of interesting, a way of distracting yourself from what you normally think about.
That is interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. And you have done something unique in your office to help leaders with what they can do in the middle of the day.
Right. So we have, which has really come up with the coronavirus, is we started offering Zoom online classes. So we have weekly classes that have been really popular with how to foam roll, how to use a lacrosse ball, kind of those things we used to go through in the office a lot, but now we don't, people are staying home more. So people are hopping online with us, doing a full body foam rolling session, coming up here, we have one on lower body mobility. And then we've switched our corporate lunch and learns, our stretch at your desk lunch and learns we do for corporations. We've been doing those through Zoom, which has been really fun and an interesting transition to see a Zoom meeting with all these people, 30 people online, all doing stretching along. It's a great team, kind of a team building exercise. A great way to get some laughter into your group, and it's been a blast.
Yes, indeed. I think that's just a fantastic idea. And I kept putting it on my calendar, and I never made it. But you had also started stretching Saturdays at your office.
Yes. So once we can start doing that, we have stretching Saturdays in our office. It's free, drop in. We mix it up sometimes. Somebody was talking about making it a mimosas and mobility. So a little fun. And we also usually once or twice a month, we'll have an evening class again, just kind of a come as you are. We pick a topic, we go through, if we say we're going to do a lower body, lower back mobility workshop, that is what we do. And it's really focused. And I think what's a little bit different is that in that intimate setting, then I can go around, make little corrections on how people are doing things and how they can do them maybe a little more effectively. So we've really gotten good feedback from that.
Wonderful. Yeah, it may be a while before we can go back to those, but I still love the concept and I love the name, Stretching Saturday. So thank you for sharing these tips with us today, Dr. Sue, helping us to stretch ourselves as leaders literally. It is critical to our ability to keep leading. What is your overarching message that you have for us today that you want to make sure we take away?
It's the reason I titled my book Move More. It's the thing that people ask me when they come into my office, when they have aches and pains, they're not sure why. It's to move more. You really need to move regularly throughout the day for your mental health, for your physical health. That's what I want the takeaway to be, is to always remind yourself you need to move more.
Thank you. And do you have a piece of leadership advice or your best leadership lesson or your favorite leadership quote that you can share with our audience to help us keep leading?
Yeah, sure. I had, one of my favorite quotes is from a business coach I had a while back. And he said, your success in business, and I think this translates to life too, is your willingness to have difficult conversations, including those conversations with yourself. And I thought that was really poignant.
That is poignant. I like that. The ability to have difficult conversations, including with yourself. That is so true.
Yeah.
As leaders, sometimes we need to have a difficult conversation with ourselves.
We're often our own worst enemy, that's for sure.
Yes, I like that, Dr. Sue. Thank you for sharing that as well. So you are just an invaluable resource to myself and so many others in the Houston community. Thank you for the hard work that you are doing and helping us all to keep leading. Oh, by the way, your website, please share that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, if you're interested in the stretches, website is lschiropractic.com. You can send us your email. We are happy to send you our Move More ebook for free.
Well, you can't beat that. So what we're going to do, Dr. Sue, is we're going to put that into the show notes, and folks will be able to get that on their devices when they're listening to it. And certainly you're going to have a page on the keepleadingpodcast.com website, and people can access your information there as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun today.
Thank you for being here. That concludes this episode, everyone. I'm Eddie Turner, the Leadership Accelerator, reminding you that leadership is not about our title or our position. Leadership is an activity. Leadership is action. It's not the case of once a leader, always a leader. It's not a garment that we put on and take off. We must be a leader at our core and allow it to emanate in all we do. So whatever you're doing, always keep leading.
Thank you for listening to your host, Eddie Turner, on the Keep Leading podcast. Please remember to subscribe to the Keep Leading podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen. For more information about Eddie Turner's work, please visit eddieturnerllc.com.
Thank you for listening to C-Suite Radio, turning the volume up on business.